This is SBS World News with Janice Peterson.
Good evening. Aid is now slowly arriving in northwest Syria from the Turkey border as the death toll from last week's earthquakes climbs to more than 41,000. Convoys have entered rebel-held areas after Syria's President Bashar al-Assad reopened two border crossings. The UN says 9 million Syrians have been affected by the catastrophe, and its Secretary-General launched a $600 million aid appeal. In Turkey, some people are remarkably still being rescued from collapsed homes. In a moment, we'll cross to our reporter, Claudia Farhat, in southern Turkey. But we begin our coverage tonight in Syria.
The search for survivors in Syria was over before it ever really began. In Idlib province, machinery, crews and hope have all been limited. For those left alive, homelessness in the freezing weather is taking its toll. Some Syrians camp out on the side of the road or in their cars, while others were given some shelter at a local sports field turned tent city.
يعني المصاب جلال شوفت عينك العالم عم تسعى ليل نهار بدنا نتقاوم ما بنعرف وين عم نستنى فرج الله. But
true relief has eluded Syria's people for more than a decade. The natural disaster follows 12 years of brutal civil war. I've now lost everything around me, Sabri says. My neighbours, our friends, our colleagues. In nearby Aleppo, aid workers are on the ground. Children gifted toys, a moment of joy in a lifetime full of despair and trauma.
Every time he forgets, he hears a loud sound and remembers, and he gets scared. Sometimes when he is asleep, he wakes up and says, "Daddy, earthquake, earthquake."
Aid is starting to cross into Syria from Turkey. President Bashar al-Assad opening two more roads into opposition-held areas. Supplies are also coming from the air, including from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, both adversaries of the Syrian president. Food, tents, clothes and medical supplies, critical in a country where cascading humanitarian crises are only worsening.
Half of the population faces hunger, and that's the worst that we've seen since the beginning of the crisis in Syria, even at the height of the war.
Syria's plight seeing the UN Secretary-General call for $600 million in aid for the next 3 months alone.
The human suffering from this epic natural disaster should not be made even worse by man-made obstacles. Access, funding, supplies.
Rescue efforts in Turkey, the UN says, are coming to a close. But some people are still defying the odds. After more than 200 hours trapped under rubble, 2 women are pulled out alive in Hatay province. In a collapsed block nearby, 2 brothers also survive. They are moments to savour, with the death toll only climbing higher.
All of those people died while screaming, "Save us, save us." There was no one. Human life has no value in Turkey.
Facing daily criticism, Recep Tayyip Erdogan continues to rebuff claims his administration moved too slowly.
Obviously, our country has faced issues that would have been seen in any part of the world. But our people should have no doubt that our state went all out to reach the earthquake zone.
The worst earthquakes in a century, President Erdogan says, were as powerful as atomic bombs. Little comfort for those left bereft. Omer Dehen, SBS World News.
And the humanitarian crisis will likely take years to address. Joining me now is reporter Claudia Farhat from Adana in Turkey. Good evening, Claudia. What are the priorities there at the moment?
Janice, the single greatest need here in southern Turkey remains shelter. In all of the camps we've visited across this region, one question everyone is asking is when will the containers arrive? Foreign donors are promising to send container homes. NATO has pledged another 1,000 just a short time ago. But there's at least 5 million people who've been displaced as a result of this disaster, so it's likely going to take a lot more to get everyone back inside. In the meantime, people who have lost their homes and don't have anywhere else to go are staying in these tents. And we're not just talking about people who escaped the earthquake unscathed either. President Erdogan says just in Turkey, at least 8,000 people have been rescued from the rubble alive since last Monday. Many of them are still in hospitals receiving treatment, and having lost their own homes, it's still not clear where they'll go when they're well enough to be released. Earlier, we visited one hospital in Osmaniye to hear how some of the survivors are recovering. In the disaster zone, healing isn't easy, but you have to start somewhere. It's Meliki's 21st birthday. She's spending it in Osmaniye State Hospital, 1 week after she was rescued from the rubble.
Diyeyim ki çok teşekkür ederim. İnşallah bir daha böyle bir deprem vakasıyla karşılaşmayız.
In a city marred by mass death, this hospital is brimming with stories of survival. Like Murat's, trapped under 5 metres of rubble for 88 hours, he whistled until he was found.
Ben ıslık çaldım. Islık daha tiz olduğu için duydular. Sonra yerimi söyledim, öyle beni geldiler aldılar.
Somehow he escaped with only a broken hand. I asked him how he held on for so long.
Yani insan bir müddet sonra ümidini kaybediyor, kimse gelmeyecek diyor ama insan sesi duydukça, yukarıda makineler çalıştıkça insan umudunu kaybetmiyor tabii.
There are 123 earthquake survivors in this hospital, but the people treating them are survivors too. A lot of the doctors and nurses had their own buildings damaged in the earthquake, and they haven't been able to go back home. But this is one of the only hospitals in the region that hasn't been severely damaged, so they press on.
Dağıtmak olduğu için ekibimiz ve tüm hastanedeki sağlık çalışanları öncelikle depremin ilk saatlerinden itibaren tabii ki çok üzgünüz. Ülkemiz çok büyük bir süreçten geçiyor ama biz güçlü bir ülkeyiz. Hep beraber yaralarımızı sarabileceğiz.
Not all wounds are physical. Berat pulled himself from the rubble with broken toes and a crushed hip. He says those injuries are getting better.
Şu anda açıkçası hani biyolojik olarak biraz tedavi sürecim olduğundan dolayı kendim iyileşme sürecindeyim. Ama psikolojik olarak sorduğunuzda hala kendime gelmiş durumunda değilim. Çünkü o anın yaşamak, atlatma süreci çok ciddi bir süreç istiyor zannedersem.
Every day there are more setbacks.
Ani tepkiler verebiliyorum. Yaşadığım şoktan dolayı. Bunlar dediğim gibi en ufak bir sarsıntıda meydana geliyor. En ufak bir ses çıktığında meydana geliyor.
Those wounds will be harder to heal with no homes to return to when the time to be discharged comes. In Osmaniye, Claudia Farhat, SBS World News.